Hey, thanks for listening to our podcast. If you want to listen live in the central Indiana area, you can hear us on 93.5 FM and 107.5 FM. As Rick Venturi joins us now, why you didn't kind of take what I lobbed at you in that pregame show about Jim joining you guys in the booth in the fourth quarter more than you did, and now I completely understand.
Well, I didn't understand when we did the pregame interview, but that's that third game has kind of been a staple.
Yeah.
For Jim to be up there, and just before I went on with you guys in the pregame, I got the word that we were going to postpone it to next week, and I didn't. I was a little unsure if that was actually true or not, and I didn't want to make your questions look bad. And that's why I was evasive, John. But obviously, none of us saw this psychological meltdown coming.
All right, I think we've heard from everybody and me now for the second day in a row regarding what has transpired here since Saturday night. What do you think of really an all-encompassing thought about Andrew Luck, his retirement, and both sides of this thing?
Yeah, well, first of all, what you talk about a bizarre evening. All I can say as I look back on it is we started the game with a tribute and a cheering for Chuck Pagano and ended with booing Andrew Luck. So, I mean, that's a heck of a 3-hour feat right there to do that. But in my take on it is that what we saw really, and we've seen it coming. Is really, and I'm not a professional, but to me, I know athletes, I know sports, I know pressure, and to me, this was a psychological meltdown, so to speak. Now, obviously, the injuries, the cumulative injuries over time have had something to do with it. But last year was a great year. I mean, it was fun. He basically was clean, went to the Pro Bowl, all that. So it isn't like 4 years. And just remember, I mean, Brady had a serious ACL. Marino, serious ACL. Breeze had what they thought was a career-ending shoulder. And Peyton played after a broken neck. So, I mean, it isn't like this doesn't happen. I mean, it isn't like you're injury-free. This is a sport that happens. And I think part of it, is a year ago coming back was a low expectation year for everyone. It was a low expectation for the team. It was really low expectations for Andrew because really what it was a hopeful return of Andrew, not necessarily, I don't think anybody was putting any pressure. Now you come into this season and all of a sudden I think this is the first casualty of tremendous expectations. You come back, you're not quite right. Every day that you miss, you're a day behind. You're expected to be, that top 5 quarterback, that championship guy. And, all of a sudden, you got a mental problem. I've had that. We've all had that. We've all had those crises. And I've always thought that, he was, I'll put it tactfully, a different kind of guy.
Sure.
He's a guy that is really interesting when he's on the field. If you've been around it like I have in games and in practice, once he steps in between the lines for a game or a practice, he commands the field. I mean, he is a big-time leader. I mean, he moves guys around. He orchestrates. He doesn't do it like Manning did as a ringmaster, but he has the same effect. But when he gets off the field, he's a different dude. I mean, his press conferences go on. They're endless. They're, in many cases, over-analysis. They border on geeky, just like the other night. I mean, let's face it, he is an architectural engineer, and he's a brilliant guy. So, that genre alone basically defines analysis. And I think in his case, many times it's an over-analysis. There's a worry. We worry too much about it. There's, at some point you just get out there and play. It's a game that you play with pain. I mean, he's different in that, in another respect, and I don't think he's a typical NFL player. I mean, who goes to Switzerland to do things? Who goes to London to watch soccer games? I mean, who does that in the NFL? I mean, he's very different from that standpoint. He has an advanced lifestyle. He has all kinds of interests. I see him in March, with his book club. I see Peyton watching tape. I mean, he's got $97 million that he's made. So, he can walk away from it. I've always said you can say that you love something. You love the game. I love the game. People fall in love and marriages break up every day. I mean, love comes and goes. The key is the game your existence. That's the difference. And I'm not sure that it is with him. I'm just not. And I think when you get to that point, a lot of us, when we go through a crisis, we don't have $97 million. We love the game, and we can't give it up, and we won't give it up. And that's where you see, the Joe Stasiaks and the Jeff Harads and a lot of these guys that have paid the price over the years but were warriors and did it. And so, I mean, he's able to walk away. I mean, from a human standpoint, from a humanistic standpoint, I can empathize. I was there in '95. I had a near nervous breakdown. It started with just, working around the clock, expectations, But, basically I didn't have the advantage. I couldn't back away from it. I couldn't walk away from it. I couldn't walk away from my team. So, as I said, as a human, I can understand it. I can empathize to some degree. But my DNA never would allow me to accept walking away with a sore leg. So I guess that's what I'll say from the Andrew perspective.
And Rick Venturi joins us. I want to ask you this because I think we both agree that Jim certainly was onto something when we talked with you guys in the booth 2 years ago about where some of the situation were to lie. And a lot of people bristled with that, got upset with that. And frankly, we're probably going to upset some folks with our conversation right now, but there's really no way to get around it unless we just kind of address it straightforward. And this was brought to me, and I think you were in St. Louis at the time. Can you compare maybe what Andrew has been going through with pain and it being there, not being there, consistent or whatever, to a baseball player that you cover like Rick Ankiel having the yips? I mean, is there something that just gets there that kind of just doesn't leave? I mean, is there a comparison to what they call in baseball kind of the yips?
You know what? And I would have to look at it in depth. I know both situations. Ankiel was never. He was never a four-time Pro Bowler. He didn't reach the heights that Andrew did. But in a sense, when he couldn't reach expectations or didn't feel, it did create a crisis with him. And that's what I think happened here. And again, he is able to walk away from it. Now, I'm glad you brought up Jim because I want to take it another step. Because after the game, and I think sometimes the Colts make a mistake, and I'm not sure why, but the most candid guy of them all is Irsay. I thought Irsay was the star of the post game press conference. He really did four things. He gave the guy his due. From that standpoint, he gave him his due. He gave him kind of a humanistic, I see this as a father. As a father, I would advise this. Number three, he gave him an out to come back. And then number four, he turned the page. He turned the page. He used the comparison of Bledsoe going down and Brady coming in and playing. He used another St. Louis analogy when Dick Vermeil lost Trent Green, and came out and made that impassionate. I was in the division in that impassionate speech. We will play with Kurt Warner and we will play good football. And then he kind of did that without hyperbole. After that, I thought it got kind of hyperbolic, and I think if we'd have gone another hour, Jacoby Brissett would have been fitted for a yellow jacket. So, but going back to the 2 years ago, basically the question was asked by me at the time is when Andrew is released by the doctors, when he is released, how long will it take? And Jim simply said that's going to be between the 4 inches between the ears, meaning that will be the psychological edge that he has to get over. That will be up to him. Now, Frank, this year in the last month, now Frank has done it senatorially. He has a very used terms like pain threshold. It's up to him. So, and I'm not saying that there is no disconnect, but I do feel like over time people do, and I'm speculating here.
And again, they're being dictated from Andrew, though, Rick. I mean, we know that they're getting dictation from Andrew about what to say. And I mentioned this earlier and yesterday. The past month of what Frank has to say, we both know Frank, and he is a good dude. You got to look back on that and think, I said all that crap, and now looking at it go, wow, since, the guy that you were talking about and, basically was dictating what was being said from this organization, decided to walk away.
Well, I guess I would ask three questions because I don't, we can speculate. We can speculate the whys, and if this was fraudulent, if it was a predetermined, I don't know. I don't think I see it that way, but I would ask three questions on this whole deal and how it came down. Number one, was it misdiagnosed? And we would know someday, but retiring at this point in time, we really wouldn't know, because if it was misdiagnosed in the beginning, as a calf strain and it was something else, then that would be, that would be inexcusable, because I know treatment-wise, I do know the guys that treat over there, and I have great faith in them. So I don't think treatment-wise it was wrong. So I go back to diagnosis, and then two things to me have really just put a darkness on this. Number one, whoever sanctioned, whether it was Andrew's people, sanctioned by the Colts or whatever, but whoever let him go out on that nationally televised day against Cleveland and go over those bags, I think basically that's somebody that should really come under fire, whether it was his people or if it was sanctioned, because there's no way that you can do that on a nationally televised game on that scene and not create an optimism about him coming back. I'll tell you myself, when I watched it, and I can't tell you how many players in my 27 years that I had to go out an hour and a half before the game. They'll say game time decision. And so what that procedure is, you go out an hour and a half before the game, and the guys touch and go, so you work him through some really hard drills, no matter what the position, and then you come back and you tell the head coach, hey, coach, he can't go, or coach, he can go. It's just up to him.
Yeah.
When I saw that drill, I've seen guys look 10 times worse than that go out and play. I mean, you couldn't walk away from that and not without a sense of optimism. So in that respect, all of a sudden 1 week before the meltdown, we really get a false optimistic view of this. And then I would say the last thing, and this is this is the world you live in, and you're great at it, but who in the Sam hell leaked it to Shepner? I mean, that to me, now Shepner's just doing his job. I mean, he is not at fault. This is what he gets paid to, whether I like the style that we live in or the world we live in of social media today. Obviously, it isn't my world, but it is the world we live in. It's the world I accept. He's doing his job. But who in the hell leaked it? Because that created a really bad day and a bad delivery on Saturday night. Had that been a press conference on Sunday, suit and coat and tie, backdrop there at the nice studios of the Colts, proper people there, proper preparation, I don't think that nearly the reaction would have been like it was at the time. And I understand the fans. I don't see – when you raise your hand to be a coach or a player in professional sports and people are paying that kind of money, and they basically held hostage to go to preseason games, all right, and that kind of money, and then all of a sudden they get something like that, they're not going to be happy. And I've always said this. I said this to my family. When those people pay that kind of money, they have the right to boo. They have the right to do whatever they want. Now, don't stop me in the parking lot. Don't come up here in the North Harbor. Don't harass my family. You don't have the right to do that. But in terms of your reaction, and I tell you what, I had a tough reaction myself. I mean, I see a guy over there joking with his teammates in a white T-shirt walking off.
He didn't know. He didn't know until the last minute either.
Well, I understand that, and that's why I go back to whoever the hell leaked it created a worse situation that would have never been there had that been a normal 3 o'clock press conference on Sunday.
Yep. Hey, Rick, I'm going to take a break and come back. You cool with that?
Absolutely.
We'll reload it, and we'll get to think about this as well. From what I was told, this whole thing was created on the sideline. So we're assuming that it's somebody that Andrew shared the information with and it got someplace. And we'll get back to that coming up on the other side. Rick, we're going to put you on hold. Rick Venturi is back for 2019, your calls, and a lot more on just some interesting Andrew Luck conversation where, well, clearly we haven't been yet. It's coming up next. 93.5 and 107.5 FM, The Fan.
The Ride with JMV. 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
And back to Rick Venturi rejoining us. Andy Moore, Automotive Group Hotline. In a couple of minutes, and I got to get into another break, and we'll have a strong 5 o'clock hour ahead with us. Is there a difference between, Rick, in your opinion, Andrew Luck retiring and quitting? Is there a difference, you view?
Well, no, I think it's related in some respects. I mean, there is a quit aspect of it. I mean, you're 29 years old. You've got a sore leg. Don't get me wrong. There's been a cumulative, bind on them. And so it's a retirement, but it isn't to me, it isn't a natural retirement. I mean, I say, I hang in there, I fight through this thing. Maybe I'm not ready to go for the opening part of the season, but, in his own words, which are very wordy, and, we use pain cycles, we use all these, analytical terms, but he said, in a sense, the only way out is to leave football. So, this is a guy in tremendous conflict, but, from the diagnosis that we know and that we're led to believe, certainly, and we don't really have any reason to believe it unless we want a conspiracy theory, then he walked away from the game.
Rick Venturi with us. All right, I want to get right with the clock here if you're okay. I'm
Absolutely.
sorry to take another break, but I want to get right with the clock. And if you don't mind, I want to offer up some folks at 239-1070 to chime in here, okay?
Sure.
All right, Rick Venturi is back at 239-1070. Your calls if you're on hold and a whole lot more. We rejoin Rick, you, me, everybody listening in the 5 o'clock hour. It's going to be good. Back with you next. Welcome back. Rick Venturi's return is always fantastic. Your calls at 239-1070, which is a new wrinkle we're going to throw into the process. Rick rejoins us right now. I think where we left off, we were talking about your thoughts on Andrew Luck, and if there's anything we haven't covered yet regarding the Colts. Do you see any big, grand conspiracy, as others do, about how the Colts are trying to sell some tickets and weren't telling folks what was going on with him?
It's hard for me to go there without empirical evidence. I mean, I'm not a conspiracy theorist by nature. I'm a body language guy. I do try to translate what people say, what the messages are out there. This was a guy that played in the Pro Bowl. This is a guy that came back and they diagnosed it as a minor calf injury. It went on, and then, it seems to have gotten worse. And of course, then we had the over the bags on the week before the game. It's hard for me to go there without more empirical evidence. I feel like that, basically Chris and Frank, I like you said, I think basically they were under the assumption that, he would progress and he would be ready for the regular season. When now I will say this, as it went on, you could see Frank's verbiage really, really lighten up. It wasn't nearly as strong as when they started training. When they started training camp, it was almost, it's just a matter of time. We're just going to take him through this process and go. And then by the end of it, things like, as I said before, pain threshold, up to him, those kind of things substituted for, he will be ready.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny to try to think about that. These guys, all four of these guys in a room, trying to come up with some big plan to make sure that they sell tickets and create the biggest distraction known to man. So sounds
exactly.
good.
And if in fact it is true, if in fact that happens, then, they will have dug a hole that will be very, very difficult to get out of.
And I think because of how this has all been set up, and again, because Andrew Luck was the pilot of this, that because he steps away and the timing being awful and really hosing a lot of folks in the process, it's going to be hard for the Colts organizationally to get that benefit of the doubt from the fans, regardless of their lack of ill intentions, Rick.
Well,
I mean, this puts them in a bad spot anyway.
Yeah, there's no question about that, and that's where the process itself really broke down. I thought the last 7 days process, the optimism that was created with the pregame warm-up the week before, and then the disastrous release of the information during the game, and I think you have a problem with the fans anyway. I mean, this not playing guys in preseason, and to a point where your starting quarterback, who's really not a proven commodity, threw 15 balls in the preseason. That's what he threw. And so, when people are forced to pay, big time money as a part of those, no longer 8 games but 10 games, and then you're not seeing any veteran players, I think you get a resistance immediately on that alone, much less, an announcement like this. So, the only way that you're going to beat this is you're going to have to beat it on the field. You're going to have to beat it with a terrific product on the field. They're going to have to find a way to get Brissett to play to their expectations. And they're going to have to get off and get running in these first 5 games.
So Rick Venturi on the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline. We'll move on to Jacoby and your expectations in just a second, but I do want to close it out with the luck portion. And this is something I brought up. It was probably ill-advised by me, but I do this often. Do you think, and it won't be this year because we know the guidelines and the rules, but do you think this is the last around here we've seen of Luck, or will maybe he have the interest in football and those juices refire again next year?
Yeah, I think it's very possible. I think it's very possible. I know we've all been in dark places, and sometimes what happens is that you walk away from it, you get rested, everything gets right. All of a sudden, you realize how much it does mean to you. You go out in civilian life, and all of a sudden, it's not the same. It's not the same notoriety. It's not the same lifestyle. It isn't the same juice as when you're in the mainstream. I mean, there's nothing like it, for better or worse, than to be in that mainstream when it goes good, when it goes bad, but you are a player. When you're no longer a player, that'll get old pretty quickly. And sometimes what you need is just a rest. I know in '95, I just needed 2 weeks. And once I got it, and of course I was so hungry and the game was my life and I needed the money. So it forced you to come back. But I don't think you've seen the end of him.
It's Rick Venturi with us. All right, Jacoby Brissett. Listen, this roster does look better, I think, across the board here. What can Jacoby Brissett do? He's been described by this organization as a top 20 quarterback in the NFL. I am not a buyer of what they're selling there, but what would you expect, and in particular early on, from him?
Yeah, I'm not quite sure. I've never, like I said, if that press conference would have gone on another hour Saturday night, they'd have been fitting him for a yellow jacket there in Canton. I've never been quite as enamored, as you know. We've talked on this show many times, as they are with him. I liked him. I like certain things about him. I think the way I would describe it to you, John, is in isolation, he does a lot of things well. He's got a big arm. He's mobile. He's big. He can see over the top. He can throw the deep ball. He's tougher than hell. I mean, he was sacked 52 times, which was the league lead, back in 17. He never cried about it. He never pouted. He never, he just kept on ticking. So there are, and I think he's a likable guy. I think players like him. I mean, I think in that respect, he has tools to be good. The biggest problem to me the biggest challenge is, can Frank and Sirianni, who are really good coaches, both technique-wise and creativity-wise, can they get him to connect the dots consistently over time? Can they get him to operate and it's really two areas. The two areas, and we talked about this on the pregame show before the Cleveland game, is can you get him to be very decisive in what he does? And to me, that means a little quicker rhythm, get him moving, get him moving outside, like on the bootlegs and things like that. If you're going to throw a play action, throw it quick and give him a touchdown, check down read, because he struggled at times by being deliberate in the pocket, by waiting for it to open up, and there's a deliberation. So, to me, you want to schematically be real decisive with him, make him decisive like he was in that short spurt against Cleveland where he was 8 for 10. He had a really good day. And then the other thing is accuracy. Can he be accurate and touch-wise over time? I rank him as decent accuracy, not great accuracy, and at times the touch isn't always there. So, I say this, to make him a top 20 or something like that, the empirical evidence just isn't there. I mean, at the end of the day, I know he played with a really, really bad team, but he had a 59% completion average, and he was 27th QBR in the league. So, I mean, that was there. Now, that's history, and that doesn't mean anything today. He played with a very bad team. It was a very bad football team in 17. The supporting cast, the defense, all of it wasn't very good. As we go to 2019, now I would not tank the season because I think he's good enough, and this team is good enough to really still be in the hunt. I honestly do. And it's going to be, can they get him to perform at a high level, and that we will see. Can they get him to be decisive and accurate over 60 minutes and for 16 Sundays? I don't think we know. And, I mean, the fact that we didn't even play him in the third game, I mean, he threw 15 passes under fire in the preseason. So, time will tell. That decision, the value of that decision will be there in September and October. But this is a much better football team. This is there's weapons on offense all over the place. This is not like 2017. And you have a coaching staff that knows how to use it, and I think they will adapt to him. Even though he's Andrew Luck type, they do things differently. He has favorites. He's a different kind of guy. He doesn't have the anticipation that Andrew does, nor the quick release. But he's got a big arm, tough, can move, can avoid. He showed you two really good plays in the Browns game there. The free blitzer he avoided and threw a real nice out to Ebron, and then the touchdown in the red zone was terrific. So, again, it's not like we're going in there with Scott Tolzien, which I knew when we went in there we were dead. So, I mean, this is, I don't think, obviously right now, we're in this real lull because of the magnitude of the Luck situation. But I don't think there's any reason to tank with this team because I think this is a very solid football team. And, John, we talked about it a couple weeks ago. We're going to find out in the first 5 weeks. The first 5 weeks of the season, you're playing two of the top 4 teams in the AFC in the first 5. You're going to play a tremendously improved Oakland team at Tennessee, and then the Falcons, who I think will be tremendously improved. So by the time you hit that bye, you're going to really have a good idea what this team is. But again, and I mean this from the heart. I don't, me, because I'm not gonna. This is unfiltered. I don't think that there's any reason to tank at this point.
Rick Venturi's with us on the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline. Is there a better option out there for a potential quarterback?
Well, probably not. I mean, the only thing that you would probably consider, you'd have to consider. I mean, if you thought about this, your options are one of two to me. One, you would have to get a proven guy that really has done it and you think can still do it, and that brings the charisma and leadership to it. And that would be a guy, and there's one guy that comes to mind, and that would be Eli Manning. You would, because I think the Manning hook here would be tremendous. I'm not sure that the Giants don't really want to move on. It costs you a lot of money, but we have money. But if you're not going to go to that level, then what you've got to do is decide, are there guys out there that are better than Kelly? Because I think, and I know that he's not going to play in the first 2 weeks, but Kelly has been terrific, albeit in the in the third and fourth quarter, which is a lot of Vitalis squad. But he has given me the wow factor, and this guy was the backup at Denver. And so, then what you either go for a top flight guy, a specific guy like trading up in the draft, or you look for a guy to be the number 2 to Brissett, because I don't think that guy's Philip Walker. I mean, he might be for 2 weeks, but I think if you go with Philip Walker, you're going to have to reduce your game plan and play college football. Now, Kelly, I wouldn't say that. I think Kelly has tremendous upside. So, but we don't even have the advantage of having him for the first 2 weeks. But so, I mean, I'm not trying to be vague on that, but I mean, I think if you don't go out and get a guy like Peyton Manning, or not Peyton Manning, but Eli Manning, which is probably impossible, but I do think the Giants would probably think about it. Then you're looking to replace, Walker and Kelly. You've got to be sure that you get somebody that would be an ideal backup.
So Rick Venturi, Andy Moore, Automotive Group Hotline. Anything else that you wanted to talk about before we take a couple of calls here and probably get lost back in the Lux spectrum here regarding what you have seen so far? And
well,
what you expect?
I mean, I did. I was really enjoying the game the other night till the fourth quarter, and the fourth quarter diminished both because of the news and because of the play. I did think that there was some, I wasn't, and I'm still not. I'm not in favor of not playing guys in week 3. I mean, I'm going through tape today. I'm watching Russell Wilson run around in the third game. I'm watching Tom Brady go 8 for 12. So apparently Pete Carroll and Bill Belichick, who've won some Super Bowls, have not didn't get that memo. But what I did like, it did give the opportunity for us to see some guys. For instance, just to start Kelly against the top number 2s, not bad number 2s, top number 2s, and he really showed us, I mean, on and beyond what I have anticipated. Like I said, I kind of have the wow factor on him right now. The other big significant things in the game, and the significant things in this game, we're going to find guys that are going to be really either situational players, or they're going to be prime backups right off the bat, or they're going to go in and play right off the bat. I thought Deion Kane just topped off, put an exclamation point on a great comeback. Not only has he been productive, but I've seen from day one out there a guy that has come back off that ACL, and I see no basic reversion on quickness, twitch, and go. I think they will have a very difficult time keeping him out of the starting lineup. I could see him being a starter at split end, with Funchess becoming more of a role player, more in the slot, things like that. I think that's critical. I think the Toure plays. I think the other significant guy was Toure, because we need him, and in passing situation, he's not a good run defender. But, again, we've seen him 2 different kinds of sacks, 4 tackles for losses against pretty good competition. And so I look for him now to be in there with Houston on those passing downs to give us that other guy. So that's really, really significant. I thought that, I thought our offensive line backups that played, I thought it's really shaky. I don't think it's very good. I don't think our first-team line, they haven't played together.
Was LaRaven Clark trying to play bad?
It's really, what a disappointing night for him. I thought, now there's one exception to that. There's one exception. I think Joe Haig has had a really good preseason, and I think basically right now, he might be a 5-hole player. He might be the first backup all the way across. I always thought Raven would be the left tackle, but he finds ways to get out of the lineup. And I also think that Josh Andrews and Boehm have really struggled. Now I like Boehm simply because I do think he posted up pretty well when he played for Kelly, and you can almost be assured that Kelly will be out some. But that backup offensive line is shaky, and really I want to see that first offensive line really improve on some things. Our blitz pickup has been pitiful. I mean, in the Cleveland practices, when they really used it, we really had trouble with things. We had trouble in the Cleveland game. We had trouble in the Chicago game. And so, I don't know what's going on there, but that coordination really, really has to pick up by the time we go to Los Angeles, because the Chargers can come after you both with their 4 and with their blitzes. You know, I like what I've seen on defense. I think our offense has been uneven, including Brissett. If you've been there every day, you have not been impressed other than that 20 minutes against the Browns in that preseason game against the Browns number 2. But our defense has been just the opposite. Our defense has dominated almost on a daily basis. I think they've looked really good up front. They're fast. I think they can get after it. I think Walker and Leonard obviously are really good. Toure really gives you something with Houston and Autry. I think the biggest key to me is Yassine Reddy. They've basically given him that job as the third corner. He looked really good early. I didn't think he looked very good in the Cleveland game. I thought Quincy played a little bit better. That's always been my concern, that we could hold up at that third corner, because you're going to play 3 corners about 67 to 70% of the time. And so hopefully Yassine is ready and is ready to play, because he's going to be looking at some really good players at that weak side split end, to start the season. So, again, a lot of good things did come out of that game. And particularly those first guys I mentioned, Toure for sure, and Deion Kane, because, John, those are potential game changers there, and that's what you need. I mean, everybody has guys that are just guys on their 53-man roster and role players, and to get to the next step, we're going to have a few more playmakers step up.
All right, a new wrinkle to the program with you is taking some calls. You cool with it?
Absolutely, yeah.
All right, 239-1070, and Matt is on the air with Rick Venturi. Go ahead, Matt. What's your question?
Prior to the Andrew Luck news, the offensive line struggles were one of the bigger storylines, and I was trying to get Rick's take on that. Is that attributed to maybe the switching coaching change between Strouser and Gouge, or is that maybe that Glowinski and Smitty have struggled over there on the right side? I just wanted to hear Rick's opinion on that.
No, that's really a good question, Matt. And and you kind of are a man after my own heart here. I was, we'll see. Time will tell. To me, I was really surprised when they let Googs go. I thought the most improved area of our football team, both in temperament and scheme, was our offensive line. I thought that was on a level that we hadn't seen around here in a really, really long time. And I just haven't quite seen the fire. Now, they haven't all been together. They haven't all played a great deal. But there is a change there. And, as soon as you make a change like that from something that's been really good, again, every decision has consequences, and we'll see as we get into this game. I also think that, certainly in the summer practice, is that Brissett is much more deliberate. He's much more deliberate than Andrew is. Andrew, once they got to the quick rhythm passing with Frank a year ago, anticipated and released much quicker than he did early in his career with different schemes. The third thing, and the biggest thing I have a question about, Matt, is they have struggled with blitz pickups. They have had trouble when people walk up into what you hear me talk about, that double sugar, walk 2 guys up in the center areas and then bring guys off the edge. We've had a lot of free blitzers, even in that Cleveland game. The play I credited Brissett was a free rusher coming right up the middle. So we've got some work to do. And hopefully we will, because that was such a strength of our team a year ago. I mean, we went from 52 league-leading sacks given up to 18 league-leading from worst to first.
Rick Venturi takes your questions at 239-1070, and Todd's on line 4. Todd, what is your question? Go ahead.
I wanted to address the quarterback situation, but just real quick here. I mean, I still see this, even with the tough schedule, as an 8-8 team, but it's a funny league because 2 or 3 plays make you a 6-10 team, and 1 or 2 plays make you a 9 or 10 win team. It's just how the league goes. On the quarterback, and I mentioned to your director there that it was discussed the backup quarterback. Technically, we're all discussing. 10 days ago, these guys were all backup quarterbacks.
Yeah.
I guess. So one thing interesting about the set, and I really think this. I think that clearly Sirianni and Reich will give him better opportunities than Chudzinski and Pagano gave him 2 years ago. I think it'll be a different scheme, and I think that'll probably enhance his situation. And then secondly, I think everybody's generally in agreement that Kelly outplayed Walker in the preseason. I don't know the rules on this, and Coach probably does. Can you stash Kelly for a couple weeks, or do you got to keep him on that opening day roster? And because I don't know if you try to stash him, if somebody else has the ability to grab him, and that's a technical logistics thing.
Yeah, he's on the suspended list, right, Rick? Right
yeah.
There?
No, those are all good questions. I'll start with the top very quickly. First of all, you're exactly right. In this league, anything can happen, and that's why I say this is not a tank situation. We used to say, and I always believe this to this day, that there's so much parity in the National Football League. You're basically handed an 8-8 season at the beginning of the year. You make it 6-10 or 10-6. So that's why I think that's more than possible. Even in the 4-12 year, there were so many games that were on the line that we could have won, and that could have looked totally different. I do totally agree with you, and that's why I'm very interested to see Jacoby, because there are a lot of things I like about him. And I do think with Frank, who there's no question he's a quarterback whisperer, and he's real significant here because he's gone from backup to starter. He knows that mentality. I mean, there's nobody better. And Sirianni brings that, between the two of them, they bring great creativity. And I think what they've done is they've maximized what they've had since they've been here. They just don't force a system. And as I said, I think Jacoby will flourish if you do a lot of quick rhythm and move him. And when you do throw deep, quick play action, touchdown, check down, 1-2, get rid of it. Don't wait for it to develop. Look at it, look at the defense, and go with it. And so I'm agreeing with you, the fact that I don't think that this season by any way is a throwaway, and I'm excited to see what they do with him.
So Rick Venturi with us. Thank you for the phone call. Got a couple more before I let you go here. Let's see. Leslie's on line 1 with Rick. Go ahead, Leslie.
Hi. I just want to ask a question. Would Mr. Irsay and Mr. Ballard consider Colin Kaepernick as a backup to Jacoby in case he gets hurt or something?
Well, I'm not in their heads. I would say that I think that would be totally a football decision. I've always felt that NFL people would hire Ted Bundy if he could help them win, to be honest with you. I've always felt that the controversy around him was overrated. I've always felt that the real reason he doesn't have a job is that he can't throw accurately enough, and he's not really truly an NFL quarterback. And if you have him, you have to have a total specialized offense like they did at San Francisco, and that's really not ideal from a backup situation. So, I mean, you never say never. I mean, all options are open at this point in time. I just feel like that they'll go with Jacoby, and because I do think they believe in him for better or worse. And I think that the second one is problematic. And you're right. Kelly will be suspended. So the decision on Kelly, if it's still Kelly and Walker, the decision on Kelly would have to be made in that third week. And I know what my decision would be. I mean, I think Kelly's legitimate. I'd hire a good life coach to make sure that he takes care of his lifestyle, because he's proven to me day in and day out that he's got some real special qualities.
Leslie, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, that's Leslie with a good call. Hey, one more thing. Here, I like that. You like this, Rick? We've never done it.
I've never been afraid of it. Even when I coach, I always felt like just tell it like it is. And people are so smart today. People understand things in the NFL, and it's just fun to talk to people about it.
All right, Michael, line 3 with Rick Venturi. Go ahead, Michael.
Thank you, David. Coach Venturi, I think you've done it for the city.
That's a tough one right there, Rick. Sorry. I don't know if that's going to work. Sorry. We'll see if we can reset that for a minute. Line 5's got Merrill. Merrill, hop on here really quick.
Yeah, I was just wondering. I'm just at a loss, really. I know how rehab and injury and all that is part of the NFL. I've had 9 labrums and had 2 total replacements done. But you can't just walk away. I mean, if he had dark feelings, if Andrew had dark feelings, why wouldn't he have exited before the draft? Or like Barry Krause said the other night, suck it up and play one more year and then retire. I mean, you have Aaron Rodgers hopping on one foot last year for the Bears game. I mean, holy cow.
Well, I'm with you. I have 2 hip replacements, a back fusion, and both ankles rebuilt. So, I do manage to get out to practice. But, I'm with you on that. I mean, the timing is horrendous. That's why I think it was a cumulative thing. I don't think it was a thing that was there necessarily in March. I think it's been cumulative. I really do. But at the same time, I will admit to you, the human side of me, okay, you're in a dark place, a psychological meltdown, which there's no doubt it is, but at the same time, I said earlier, my DNA just can't accept walking away with a sore leg.
Oh, I couldn't either. No, I played sports for years. I couldn't do it. And right now, I guess just God bless Ortho Indy. They put me back together a lot of times.
Thank you, Merrill, for the call. Appreciate that. Well, what do you think about the whole taking calls segment right there? You like it?
Oh, yeah, I really do, John. And, like I said, we can go on. Heck, if we got to go on earlier on Monday, we're on weekly. We can talk all afternoon. I love being out there, as you know, when we do things remote. And I've just always been one of those unfiltered. If you ask me a question, I may not be right, but I'm going to tell you what I think.
All right. Well, anything else you want to add before I let you go here as far as points of interest here?
No, I'm looking forward to I really love working with Rake. You know that. We're doing I call it the Employment Bowl Thursday night in Cincinnati. I mean, a lot of people don't look forward to that. I really do because I've been there. There's so many kids just fighting their butts off for a job. I mean, there's so many things that can happen, so many dreams that can be either, the dreams live or they die Thursday night. These kids will play their tail off. And the other forgotten thing, which I always mention at this time of the year, it's not only those fringe spots on the roster, and I've seen a lot of guys steal it at the last minute, but it's those 300-plus practice squad jobs, which pay a lot more than a kid that graduates from college can start with in any other field. So, there's so much on the line on Thursday night, and I really kind of get into that. I look forward to that, and then we'll be in Los Angeles for real.
My friend, I love it. I'm so happy that you're back, and it's interesting conversation from what transpired Saturday, but it is always awesome radio when we get on here.
And we're going to be on, and John, this is new. Every time we play a Thursday night, our weekly show will go also on Friday. So we'll be back on Friday this week, and then later when we play the Thursday night game.
Stay in touch this week. Thanks, Rick.
All right, John. Talk to you.
Rick Venturi, he is back. Right here every Monday, and we'll adjust when the schedule prevails here.